Well, in the midst of that kind of confusion, here's Micah's promise. He shall gather them as the sheaves into the floor. Sound like what Jesus just said in chapter 20, verse 18? And then Micah continues, arise and thresh, O daughter of Zion. This is a threshing floor after all. For I will make thine horn iron. And then he goes on from there. Now see where he picks up with this in 3 Nephi chapter 20, verse 19. For I will make my people with whom the Father hath covenanted. So this clarifies that all that Micah was talking about is in the context of the Father's covenant with his people. Yea, I will make thy horn iron. Okay, now we're back to Micah. And I will make thy hooves brass. Thou shalt beat in pieces many people. I will consecrate their gain unto the Lord, and their substance unto the Lord of the whole earth. And behold, I am he who doeth it. Now again, that sounds harsh. Maybe even harsher than the idea of a young lion among the flocks of sheep treading down and tearing in pieces. But remember, this is the Lord as both lion and lamb. And here, when it talks about iron horns and brass hooves and beating in pieces many people, this is not some kind of militaristic call to arms. Let's unpack this incredible verse. As part of the gathering, which is part of God's covenant, he's going to take his people and make their horn iron. So we're trying to shift the metaphor now from a lion, back in verse 16, earlier in Micah, to some kind of an ox, something with horns. And think about what animals do with their horns. Often these are used in battle, right? And imagine a clash of these animals, both having horns, but imagine if one of them had horns made of iron, an unbreakable horn. Now even here, don't think too much about horns used in battle, but that battle is simply to establish leadership of the herd. So in some ways, whichever animal has the strongest horns provides the leadership and the protection for the entire group. Now, isn't that what God's chosen are supposed to do? He's giving them a stronger horn than others. Why? So that they can serve and protect everyone else, not to fight them. It's to fight the enemy. In fact, here's a fascinating cross-reference. Deuteronomy 33 is where Moses, who's about to leave Israel as they go into the promised land and he returns to God, he blesses each of the 12 tribes. And notice the blessing he makes upon the tribes of Joseph. He doesn't separate out Ephraim and Manasseh here as two separate ones. And that's important because we see many in the church today, the majority are often from the tribe of Ephraim, and yet the Book of Mormon peoples were from the tribe of Manasseh, Lehi at least, and his posterity. Both Ephraim and Manasseh are part of the tribes of Joseph. And what was the blessing that Moses pronounced upon the tribes of Joseph? Listen to this. The whole blessing is Deuteronomy 33, 13 through 17. But notice this phrase in verse 12, blessed of the Lord be his land. See, the first time Joseph received blessings was back at the end of Genesis 49, when Israel himself, Jacob, lays his hands upon each of his sons and gives them kind of an original patriarchal blessing. And for Joseph, it talked about a branch growing over the wall. So think of this fruitfulness and going beyond a natural barrier. Picture the Lehites, this one of the tribes of Joseph, extending themselves, growing into a new land. And part of the blessing for this tribe is blessing upon the land. Then, listen to this in verse 17. His horns are like the horns of unicorns. Now that is an interesting translation. The King James translators may have been getting ahead of themselves. Wild oxen is what they meant by that. But his horns are like the horns of wild oxen. With them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth. So do you get a sense from that? Another purpose for the horns? It's not just to fight off enemies. Again, it's leadership, it's protection, it's gathering. With their horns, they can push, they can guide. It's like a cattle prod from the cattle himself. That he is shepherding, guiding the rest of the herd together. These are oxen who use their horns to push the people together, to gather them from all over the earth. Next time you go to the threshing floor, to the temple, and get down to floor level itself, the baptistry, what do you see at that lowest point of the temple? You see 12 oxen facing the directions so that they can go out over all the ends of the earth. What is the burden that they bear? the covenant. They're carrying it to the world upon their own backs. The blessings of the atonement of Jesus Christ, cleansing through repentance and faith in the saving grace of God. And what do each of those 12 oxen have? Horns that they use as they spread out across the world to herd the rest of the family home. Imagine doing that with an iron horn. Miraculous strength, far beyond what we would naturally be able to grow ourselves. That's what the Lord is offering.